Hello everyone, this is Tek, and today I come to you with a little different video. So as you can see, I've got a lot of book covers over here, and these are all the books I read in 2022. There is a total of 187 of them, I believe. There should be 186 because I read one twice. So 186 unique books, and I am going to rank all of them. So I'm going to start with the easier ones. So I got my tier list here. S is the best, A is great, B is mid tier, C is lower tier, D is lowest. So I am going to be ranking all these books, and well, it's gonna be a long trip. So let's have a look. I'm going to go a little bit random at first because I want to make sure that I get it right. Starting with some of the highest and lowest ones, probably. Breaking Dawn is D tier. This is the last Twilight book. We all know how we feel about Twilight. I mean, it's bad, it's offensive, it's just not good. I didn't enjoy reading it, but I wanted to finish the series, so there we go. Another one on D tier is Dracula. I actually don't DNF stuff, but this is the closest I have probably come to DNFing anything in like the past, I think, like 5 years. I haven't DNF'd any book in the past 5 years, but Dracula I almost put down. But I did finish it, but I just didn't write a review on it because I just didn't want to. So yeah, that's definitely not a favorite. I am also going to sometimes cross-reference this to my Goodreads and my story graph just to look up, because I don't remember all of the ratings I gave. So one I will put in the second tier is Treban, de Bron der Magie, Treban, the Source of Magic. This is a Dutch fantasy book, and I wouldn't call it outright bad, but it just wasn't all that good. It was very boring. I didn't care for the characters. Magic system was okay, but that's really all I liked about it. That and the cover art. The cover art is really pretty, but that's it. Mid tier is going to be Nergens, or Nowhere in English. This is another Dutch book that doesn't have a Dutch English translation, and it's a fun one shot. It doesn't have a sequel or series or anything, but it's fun, but it's not all that great. They end up in a different realm, but we don't get to explore it all that much, and it's more about the interpersonal conflict, which is fine. The characters are fine, but I would have preferred a little bit more focus on the world we're visiting. Another D tier is going to be Did You Know Wolves? This is a French book. I read the Dutch translation about wolves for children. There's a few children's books about wolves in here, because I just read every book about wolves I can find. This one is going into D tier because it's supposed to be funny, but it's just not funny. The art isn't great. It gives very little good information, so that's why it's there. Then another C tier is going to be Battleborn. As you can see, I'm going a little bit random at first because I want to make sure that before I start arranging everything, that I just got the ones I'm certain about out of the way. There's a few ones I'm more doubtful of, which I will do later. So this is Battleborn. This is the last book in the Elementals trilogy, and at this point I was just kind of really tired of the series. So I mean, it's not bad per se, but I guess I could. Okay, I'll put it in the B tier. It's not horrible. Just wasn't for me. Then we have. Excuse me as I cross-reference this. The Lost Ringbearer. Okay, so this is a funny one. I'm gonna put it in C tier. This is actually basically officially published Russian Lord of the Rings fanfiction told from the POV of Mordor, which is very interesting in concept, but the execution, I just really hated it. It was so boring. I didn't care. It gets points for being original and actually being bold enough to publish Lord of the Rings fanfiction, because Lord of the Rings isn't in the public domain yet. But aside from that, yeah, it doesn't have an English official translation, but there is an official or an unofficial fan translation, which I have read. Then we go to The Good Dog by Avi. This is a B tier book. It's a xenofiction about I think it's an Alaskan Malamute, and it's kind of about a conflict about being wild or not being wild. It's fine, not that great in the character department, but I liked it. Another, let's see, do we have another repeat here? The Ice Princess. This one has not been translated into English as far as I know, but this is book 1 of the Princesses of Fantasia series by Thea Stilton. It's fine, mostly a little bit weird on the romance, like the girl ends up developing, I mean that's spoilers, but it's a little bit on the romance, but it's not bad per se. I didn't like the how the climax resolved, but it wasn't bad or anything. Then a little higher is going to be book 2 in the series, The Coral Princess, which is from the same series. I liked it a little better, I liked the characters better, it was a little bit more unique in the revelations and in the villain's backstory. Then we have our first A tier, Gods and Warriors. This is book 1. I believe it's also known as The Outcast. It's book 1 by by Michelle Paver, who also wrote the Wolf Brothers series, and it is about basically ancient Greece before they had all the gods and stuff. So it's more about like really ancient Greece. It's very interesting, good characters, good character development. Not my favorite, but I liked it. Another A tier, Spirit Animals book 1. Okay, so there's obviously the whole cultural appropriation issue. As far as I know, the whole spirit animals concept is like a close religious practice to some cultures, which you're not supposed to just take and shove into your fantasy book. But I mean, that's problematic. But aside from that, it's actually like a solid book, a solid first entry. The characters are likable, especially Roland. He's like a little shit, but I love him for that. It's great. And the world is pretty interesting. I mean, the spirit animals are kind of, you know, like somewhat problematic, but they aren't really all that spiritual. They're more like kind of like a demon in his Dark Materials context, but they're fine. This one I'm not sure about, so I'm going to cross-reference this. The Grizzly King by, where is it? Here. This is going to be upper B tier. This is a xenofiction about a grizzly bear who befriends a little bear cub, and it's good. It's not perfect, but it's fine. Then I'm going to put this one in front of the A tier. Burning Shadow. This is book 2 of Gods and Warriors, and as you can imagine, it's better than the first actually. We get a new animal companion who is a lot better than the first. The dolphin in the first was just kind of there. The lion actually has more of like a close bond with the people, so that's nice. And overall, it's just a slightly better version of the first book. Then in B tier, we are also going to put Cat Sense by John Bradshaw. This is a non-fiction book about cats, basically everything you can imagine, behavior, biology, evolution, stuff like that. The only thing I don't like is that he is very pro outside cat, which is just something I and a lot of other cat people are just really against. I'm not going to go on a whole rant here, but it's just not something I'm into. Then on the C tier, lower end, mid end I think. I will put this after Triban. Is Een the Death of the Halfling or Een the Dood of the Halfling. This is a Dutch fantasy book. It was just boring mostly. The characters were boring. I didn't care for the conflict of the world. Despite there being a dragon on the cover, the dragon barely appears. It was just a letdown. And it's also not about hobbits like in the context of halflings. It's about like half-elf people, which also is cool, I guess. Okay, so I'm just going to fill up the S tier for a bit. Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, obviously. Who's Lord of the Rings fan, so you probably know what to expect over there. I read the other Lord of the Rings books too, so I'm going to look for them. They should be in here somewhere. Oh, why can't I find them? Oh, here's the Two Towers at least. Two Towers goes behind the Return of the King, I think. Just going to check. Yes, Two of the Towers goes beyond there, and then the Fellowship is the first ranking, if I can find it. And now I got a version with Frodo on the cover over here. Okay, so this one is first A tier. The Seekers books, I read a bunch of those. I'm going to see if I can rank those. The one that is in front is Spirits in the Stars, and it is a I'd say probably behind Cat Sense. It's not a very satisfying conclusion, but it's okay. Then the other Seekers book I can find is Island of Shadows. This one was just not my favorite. I'm gonna put it on the lower end of the B tier. It's not bad, it's just, you know, not greatest. Then we have this one, which is, I believe, book 1 of the first series. No, it's book 2. This one got 4 stars on my rating, so I'm going to put it on the lower end of the A tier. And I'm going to see if I can find any more of the Seekers books. I know I read most of Arc 1, or probably all of Arc 1 this year. Where is Great Bear Lake is book 2, which I thought was... I liked it at first, but later I kind of started to dislike it. It's not bad, but I'll probably put it in the... I'll put it behind the last book of Arc 1. No, actually in front. I just think that it wasn't a very satisfying conclusion. The conclusion of book 2 gets to go above that. Then I'm going to look if I can find any more. I can't read the titles on the covers, so I just have to improvise a little bit. This one is Smoke Mountain, which was my favorite book in the Seekers arc. So I'm going to put this one on the upper A tier. And I'm going to see if I can find any more. Fire in the Sky, which one was that? Fire in the Sky is 5 and I gave it 3 stars. So I'll put it above. Nowhere, but not above the other books. I'm going to see if I can find any more Seekers. Otherwise I'll do it later. Oh, I do see Daybreak. This was my favorite book of the year, so it gets to go in front. No, that will make Ethan happy probably. Okay. So I'm going to see if I have anything else. A Game of Thrones. It gets to go on the A tier because I did give it 4 stars and I do like a lot of aspects for it, but I don't think I'm going to continue the series because it's just too dark and depressing for me. Like, you can write on dark subject, absolutely, but handle it with text, and even then it's just not something I want to read. That's why I don't read a lot of adult fantasy. It's usually just becomes really dark and depressing, and I mean Lord of the Rings also can get really dark and depressing, but it still has like a lot of hope. And it doesn't delve into sexual stuff, and which makes me uncomfortable, but yeah, that's why I like Lord of the Rings. It's like the only adult fantasy I actually like to read. Speaking of adult fantasy, as Cannon's Bride probably gets to go on C tier. This is book 4 of a adult fantasy series I read. I like the first 2 books, fine. It also delved into dark stuff, but I at least somewhat liked them back then, but I didn't like the last book. Then I am going to see if I can find anything else. I see Nashoga and Bloodmoon, so I'm going to see if I can rank the Redstone book. Nashoga, this is book 1 of the Redstone duology, and I gave it 3 stars. I liked it okay, but I don't think I like it better than The Good Dog, so I'm going to put it over there. And then there is the sequel book, Blood Moon, which I do remember liking slightly better than the first, but not by much, so it just gets to go above. Opus Red Fox. This one also has 3 stars, but I remember not liking it very much and just thinking it's kind of boring and predictable, so gets to go on the lower B tier. Now we get our first. I have a lot of wolf books for younger readers because I read everything with wolves in it. So this one is like a 2-star book, but I at least enjoyed it more than probably these other books. So I'm going to put it on the higher end of the tier. Then we have Fell. It is probably one of the more famous fictions I read. It is book 2 of the site, and I can't get a physical copy of it anywhere. So yeah, that's very annoying because I do have a physical of the site. And I gave it 3 stars. It's not a bad book per se, so I'm going to put it a little bit higher up. But what mostly annoyed me is that it is very little about the titular character, who is a wolf, and more so about this one girl who plays a part in the story. And I mean, the characters are fine, but when your book is titled Fell and the first book is about wolves, you expect like an equal amount of wolves in the second book, and it's much more about humans actually, so it's kind of boring. Then I have a few more wolf books, I think. We have Wolves by Angela Royston, which is that one. This one has 4 stars, so I'm going to assume it's one of the better ones. They kind of start to blur together after a while, but I'm going to put it before Game of Thrones. Okay, then we have Wolves by Jen Green, which is this one, and it has 2 stars. I'm going to put them in front of these because while they're objectively probably worse, I at least enjoyed like reading them more. At least wasn't bored or anything, so that's always a good thing. Let's see if I can find any more wolf books. Right now I can't, so I have a street cat named Bob, which I know I really liked, so I'm going to put it in A tier. This Grey Wolves book over here I also really liked. This is a really short non-fiction, also for children, but it was like actually really up to date and good, so I also liked that one. Then we have the Wild Animals of the North. This one is either lower A or upper B. I'm gonna go with lower A. So the thing with this book is like it has beautiful illustrations, so absolutely look at it for the illustrations, but there's also some non-fiction information in there, and it's so brief and so bare bones that it isn't really all that educational. So for the visuals it's great, for the information it's not. Then I see the Dark Eye trilogy over here, which I am also going to rank. I have, let's see, the first one is Wild Book City is the first book, and this is a dark xenofiction for probably young adults about different wild canites, and it is really good, but also like really dark and kind of depressing, so know what you're getting into. I'm going to rank it above Seekers and Grey Wolves. Then we have the second book, which is called Animal Words. And this one also got the same ranking roughly. I probably liked it a little worse than the first book, but not by much. And then we get The Starving Heart, which has, I believe, 3 stars. Yeah, okay, so this is the last book in the trilogy, and while it's still good, it's it basically becomes really depressing. Sorry, I can't talk. It becomes really depressing and just no longer fun, and I don't know, it just kind of starts to get boring, and just wasn't for me, I guess. By book 3, I sometimes I just got tired. I've read this trilogy once before, and I had the same opinion then. It's not bad. It's just no longer fun or interesting to read. It's just kind of starts to get boring and too depressing. So I am going to rank it roughly there. It is still good, it's just no longer fun, I guess. Then I have this one, which is also a C tier. It's not bad per se, but this wolf book is basically just a repackaged version of Never Cry Wolf, with a little bit more additional pages of wolf information, but it's basically just a repackaged version, which I'm not super into. It's not horrible, but just not for me, I guess. The Living Mountain gets to be upper D tier. It's a collection of like stories and poems, I guess, about like the Scottish, I don't know how to pronounce that, Cairngorms? I don't know. I almost DNF'd it. It was just I couldn't get it to the writing voice. Then we got Brightest Africa by Carl Akeley. About this rank probably. This is about a taxidermist and hunter in Africa in the late 1800s, and you probably already know what happens and what racism. It's not fun, especially since it's written from his POV. But he is one of the founding fathers of taxidermy, so that's why I wanted to read it, because that's something that interests me. So it has some historical value, but I otherwise don't recommend it. This one is also upper D tier. It's not horrible, probably better than The Living Mountain. The Omsingelde Jager or The Surrounded Hunter. I don't think this has been translated into English, but this is a Dutch book about prehistoric humans in Africa, and it was just really boring. I couldn't get into the characters, the world building, whatever. It just wasn't for me. Then we get The Desert Princess, which is my favorite book of the Princesses of Fantasia series so far, so I'm going to paste it over here. Foxcroft Book 1 is lower A tier. Xenofiction series about foxes. I read book 1 and book 2 this year. If I can find book 2, I will rank it also right now. There's just so many of these. Can I find book 2? Right now, it looks like I can't. So I'm just going to go with this one, Skulls. This one is just basically a collection tour with a lot of photos of this one guy's skull collection of animals. And yeah, if you like skulls, like I do, it's probably interesting. If you don't like skulls, you probably don't. But despite there being a lot of pictures, there's also like a lot of information about skulls, like in a cultural and historical context. So yeah, this one is really good. Lost Animals. This is also a really good non-fiction about extinct animals, and it includes pictures, so like actual photos of them. So it's, if you're like get really emotional about extinct animals like me, probably a good read, but it will also really kind of hurt. It is The Archer of Hirado, or The Boogschutter of Hirado in Dutch, and this is a upper B tier book. I just mostly thought it was the romance in this is just such an insta-love and unbelievable. It's a historical fiction novel, which is fine and everything, but it's just so boring. Then we have The Lion. Book about lions. Mystery of the White Lions, this is called, by Linda Tucker, and this is probably lower B tier. It has a lot of metaphysical stuff about the and mythical stuff about the significance of white lions to some cultures in Africa. But it turns out that one of the guys she interviewed is also kind of like into anti-Semitism and stuff, so not super great, because that's not portrayed in the book. You just can find it out through an easy Google search. So, you know, maybe be a little careful with who you interview for your book. Then we have Spirit of the Fox. I can't find it right now, but I do know I read it. I have to cross-reference this one. Yes, I found it on Goodreads. This is a okay xenofiction about a fox who escapes a fur farm and tries to survive in the wild. It is kind of pro fur farm, so if you're not into like fur farms in general, probably not the best read. It's also kind of depressing. They almost don't talk. It's written more in a style of like The Call of the Wild, so no talking animals. But it's a good book, okay. But it's also very like pro fur farm. So I mean, I know I'm kind of gray on the issue. It's a moral issue, you know. I'm kind of in a gray area. But if you're really against it, which I know a lot of people are, probably not a good book for you. It's okay, I'm having a difficult time ranking this one. I'm gonna put it below The Coral Princess. Now we have Firstborn, which is a non-fiction about wolves, and it gets to be in the B tier, mid probably. I just don't find the characters very interesting, except for like 2 characters and the main character. But the main character is more like the narrator than an actual active player in the story, so that's just kind of it. But the wolf characters are just kind of boring, except for like 2, and the wolves are like the central part of the story, so they probably shouldn't be boring. I'm gonna put it after the Starving Heart. Now we have the field guides for warriors. I think I've read most of them this year, except for the Ultimate Guide. And I gave most of them the same ranking. I know that I liked Cats of the Clans a little more, so it gets to be a B tier. Roughly here. And then we have Code of the Clans, if I can find it in here. It's also going to be upper B tier. And then I read Secrets of the Clans. I don't have a lot of to say about these. These are just mostly fine. Except for Secrets of the Clans, which is also fine, but it also has like a lot of retcons, so you know. And then there is Battle of the Clans. If I can find it in here, I know it is Backstar on the cover. Battle of the Clans, where are you? I cannot find it right now, but I know I read it for a fact. Oh, well, that will come later then. Seraphina and the Black Cloak. It's probably 3.5 out of 5. That's the upper B tier. And then I have the second Seraphina book, which I know I liked a little better, so it gets to be above that. Then we have another wolf non-fiction book by Anna Dory. This is called The Art of Being a Wolf. And it has a lot of pretty pictures, but it's also like not very accurate these days with the information given. It still uses a lot of outdated theories and stuff, so upper C tier. Secret of the Wild Woods. This one was a 4-star of mine, so it gets to go roughly here. Probably above the field guides actually. And then we have House with the Lions. It is a non-fiction about a woman who lived in Rotterdam Zoo during the First and Second World War. It's fine, not bad, just I couldn't get super into it. But it's still good, so I'm going to rank it roughly here. Then we have The Walls of Gurrenpaw. This is basically a illustrated and more juvenile tale of Lobo, King of the Gurrenpaw. If you're into wolves, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you don't, they don't. It's a story based on a true story about a legendary kind of wolf who lived in, like, I believe the late 1800s. This is a good book. I think the illustrations were actually really rushed, so I didn't like that very much, but it's still good. So probably before the Starving Hearts. It's still depressing, but I at least had more fun reading it. Then we get Thylacine. This one is on the lower end of the C tier. It's not horrible. This is basically a guy who's very convinced that Thylacines are still out there, which is fine. Everyone can have their own opinion about that. But in this book, he basically tries to prove that, but he actually doesn't provide any evidence other than like word of mouth, which is not real evidence because everyone can fabricate that. So, you know, I'm all for people trying to prove that thylacines still exist. If you want them to do that, go ahead. I mean, I'd love to know that they still exist. They are my favorite animal. It would mean the world to me. But please provide actual proof and don't just interview a bunch of people and call it proof, because that's not how proof works. The Knight of Rosande, de Ridders van Rosande. This is a Dutch historical fiction, and I thought it was really boring. No offense to the author. It's like the cover makes it look, with the knight on a horse, it makes it look really action-packed, and it's actually mostly just a girl being silent, like she takes a vow of silence, which is fine. But she mostly just idles about in roughly the same inn or around the same inn where she has to work to try and find out leads for a situation. But that's pretty much it. There's very little actual action, which the cover would make you assume. Then we have Dogs. This is going to be a very good book. I'm gonna put this one in the upper A tier. This is a book about extinct canines and animals that look like canines, such as hyenas, and basically about their evolution and the different species that lived. And I don't know, I'm very into like the evolution, especially of like animals and canines. So it was really interesting to read. Okay, here we have Foxcraft Books 2, which is one of my favorites I read of the year. So I'm going to put it over here. Before Wild Dog City. Okay. Animals Strike Curious Poses. This is a non-fiction about various animals who lived throughout history. And it's fine, not bad, but I mostly thought it was kind of boring, so I'm gonna put it behind the Archer of Hirado. Then we have Ziemlich Beste Pfoten. This is a German non-fiction about a guy whose dog got lost, and they are later found again, but basically he goes back to Spain to try and retrace the steps the dogs took, how they ended up where they were found, because they actually made like a whole journey. There's also a lot of word of mouth in this, so if you sometimes you can choose what you believe, which is true and which is made up, but there's a little bit more proof in here than in the Thylacine book. So and the dogs did actually make an actual journey, otherwise they wouldn't have ended up in a different location. So this one is okay. The author is kind of like a jerk about the dogs sometimes though, because they are actually like one of the dogs is actually his wife's and not his own, and he himself doesn't really like dogs, so he can be really insensitive about the dog. And I know it's a story about him warming up to them, but it's not the best, you know. Still enjoyable though. Just hope you can get past the offer. I'm gonna put it a little higher actually, right above, about here. Yeah, behind the cat sense. Okay. So now I'm going to try to go in order of the list. Dragon's Green, I don't need to cross-reference with my storybooks. Same story as with Ein and Ascendant Rite and stuff. This is a fantasy book, and I thought it was really boring, so sorry, the characters didn't interest me, the story didn't interest me. So if a book doesn't grab me, I do finish them. I don't DNF stuff, at least I have it in the past 5 years, so I did read it, but it was really boring. Yeah. This is a book about spiders and other creepy crawlies, and well, I like it, and it has a lot of beautiful illustrations, because I love spiders actually, so you know, if you don't like spiders, I'm sorry, I guess, but I really like them, so I wanted to read about them. But this really is kind of like a book about. I mean, I guess it would qualify as like showing off how cool the animals are, but it also kind of comes across as fear-mongering. Like, look how this spider can kill you, and how this spider can kill you, and how it hunts. And I'm like, there's more to spiders than just, you know, it's venomous and it can bite you and whatnot. It's just, I don't know, I feel like it's a little too fear-mongery, and especially since spiders already have like kind of a bad reputation. I don't know, I kind of wish it would go like more into like how they fit into the ecology and stuff, and their behavior other than hunting and biting. How to Tame a Fox. This is another non-fiction. Probably going to put it above Shiban. This is written by the people who worked on the Russian fox experiment. If you don't know what that is, basically in somewhere in Siberia, I believe, in the 20th century, they tried to domesticate foxes, and this is basically a book about it. It's very biased though, in favor of the experiment. The actual results are proven to be kind of exaggerated. I mean, the foxes did become more tame, but some of the results of the experiment have been exaggerated, and especially since this was written by the actual people who worked on the experiment, it's a little biased. So you can read it if you're interested in it. I mean, the experiment still interests me a lot, but just knowing, going that it's been a bit exaggerated. So yeah. This is another wolf non-fiction book, and this one goes F4. This upper seat there. No, probably higher. I put it behind Spirit of the Fox. This is a wolf non-fiction for children again. Beautiful illustrations, and some basic information, not all that much to it. Alsense, this is a book about a woman who wants to see all of the owl species that Europe has to offer in the wild. It's interesting, you learn a little bit about each species, but the author does tend to go off topic quite a few times, which is a bit annoying, since I'm here to learn about owls, and sometimes she just goes on different tangents, which, I mean, it's her book, so she can do it, but not for me personally. I'm gonna put it behind Ziemlich Beste Pfoten. Then we have In the Power of the Wolf Witch. This is a short Dutch children's book that left a big impact on me as a child. So I recently rebought it for really cheap, just to kind of reread it, because I read it only once as a child, but I always remembered it. This was one of the few childhood books I actually really remember. And yeah, it's very short, but it's still kind of really good. It's written by a famous Dutch children's book author, and I don't know, I had a good time reading it. It's short, but it's fun. It's kind of dark. I mean, Paul van Loon often writes dark children's books, but the way in which the villain perishes is like kind of brutal. But yeah, it's basically about a boy whose sister gets turned into a wolf, and he has to find a way to turn her back. So yeah, I'm actually quite positive about this one, so I'm going to put it quite a bit higher actually. There we go. Storm, this is a historical fiction that takes time about the Protestant Reformation, and I also really like this one. Good characters, good story. I haven't seen a movie it's based on. I believe this book is actually based on the movie, not the other way around, but I'm not 100% certain. But either way, I haven't seen the movie, but the book is solid. Okay, now we get to the Bravelands. I read all of Arc 1 this year, and I believe also a little bit of Arc 2. Broken Pride was one of my lower rated Bravelands books, so I'm gonna put it behind Vel. Then we have Book 2, which was probably better. I'm going to cross-reference it for a moment. Yeah, this was actually one of my highest rated books of the year, so it gets upper 8 tier. Then we have, which book is next? Blood and Bone. This one is also a very good one. Yes, upper. I put it behind Gods and Warriors. Then we have, let's see which one is next. This is book 4. book 4 I gave 3 stars. The first arc of Braveland's book, the first half of Braveland's arc 1 is basically really good, and then the second half is like really disappointing. I mean, it gets dark, so if you want dark Aaron Hunter books, good for you, I guess, but because there's like cannibalism and stuff. But aside from that, it's like it gets kind of boring. So yeah, not my favorite. Gonna put it behind the last Braveland's book. Then we have the 5th book, which is the Spirit Eaters. This is kind of where things get dark. I think I rated it a little higher. Yeah, also 3 stars. Like the second half of the first arc is where things really start to drag. It does have a pretty satisfying conclusion, but not that high. So I'm going to put the last book of arc 1 any lower. I'll probably put it before the Serafina books, or roughly at the same place. Yeah, a little behind, probably behind Cat Sense. Okay, then we have Braveland's Arc 2, which I also at least started reading. I'm not sure if I finished it this year. Shadow on the Mountain is the first book, with the gorillas, if I can find it. I'm going to check where I put it. 3.5 stars. So it's probably like... let's say it's a little behind the final book of Arc 1. Then we have the second book, which is also about the same rating. The weird thing is that the second Bravelands arc actually has only 3 books, which is the first time in a Aaron Hunter arc, as far as I know. Pretty much all others that aren't like novellas or super editions all have 6 books, like the ones that are telling a consecutive story. And for whatever reason, this one has only, you know, a few, so like 3. I don't know why that is, but we are getting a third arc, which is probably also going to be only 3 books. But I can't find book. Oh, here it is. I remember liking this one a little more, so I'm going to put it behind Cat Sense. And then we have the final book, which I really liked, the final book of Arc 2. So I'm gonna probably put it over here. Okay. Then we have the Dreamwalker series. This is the first book. This is a Dutch Viking historical fantasy. And it's good. I don't have a lot to say about it. Good characters, good mythology. Not perfect, but yeah, it's good. I'm probably going to put it in the B tier or A tier, roughly. Yeah, actually it deserves the A tier. Over here. Then there is a second book in the series as well as a prequel, so I'm going to see if I can find those. Because there are not. This is the second book, and I think I may have liked it a little better than the first actually. I just like the character better, the main character. So that one goes in front, and then there is a prequel, which I also read this year. Over here. This is Valkyria, and I didn't like it as much as the other 2, so it goes a little lower, but it has a really gut-punching ending, so points for that. The Unexpected Truth About Animals. I don't remember much about this one. Oh, this one is a non-fiction about various animal species misconceptions, and I liked it fine, but pretty much most of the misconceptions it focuses about are like really sexual and to do with reproduction, and I'm like, there are more misconceptions about animals like that without getting super sexual and stuff. Like, I'm not a prude, but just a little bit more variation would have been nice. So it's fine. I'm gonna go behind Alsense. Then we have Finding Gobi. This one is a 4-star book. Gonna put it over here. This is about a man who rescues a stray dog from a desert in China, I believe, during a marathon, and then he has a struggle to bring it home to his home country. We were here first. It's is a non-fiction about various animals in Africa and people who are working on like sanctuaries and stuff to protect these animals. And this one was also pretty good. Gonna put it over here. And we have The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs. This one is solid, but I have by now just realized that I just don't really care about the topic of dinosaurs anymore, which is weird because I used to hyperfixate on them as a kid, but nowadays it's a good book. It just kind of bores me, I guess. I'm sorry to the author, he did a really good job, but yeah, it just doesn't interest me anymore. Then we have the Endling book. So Endling 1 gets 4 stars. This is also a xenofiction fantasy, and it's really solid. So I'm gonna put it about here. Okay, then we have book 2. If I can find it, this is book 2 of Endling, and it also gets a 4-star rating. I don't remember if I liked it better or worse than the second, or the first. I rated them all 4 stars except for the last one. So I'm gonna leave it over here, and then I'm going to see if I can find the last one. The last one I didn't like as much. It's still good, but not as strong as the first 2, so probably gonna put it over. It's not perfect, this ranking. I'm still going to move things later, but this is roughly where I'm going to rank things now. Pirate Sun. This is another historical fiction by the same author as The Archer of Hirado, and it's about a boy from Morocco who ends up in the Netherlands in historical times, and I really don't remember much of it actually, except the ending. So I rated it 3 stars, so it's probably on the lower end. I didn't like it that much. It's fine, but nothing great. Wolfpack. This is a Dutch xenofiction about wolves, but I didn't like it a whole lot. I still liked it better than quite a few of these books on the C tier, but it still isn't very good. It's very rushed, very short. I mean, obviously it's for younger readers, but still, just the pace kind of kills all character development and leaves very little impact on plot points. So yeah, it's not that good. Black Beauty. I gave 5 stars. It's a good book, but I think it's too preachy. Like you have the characters literally saying out loud, I dislike X, I dislike Y. Like, give your character, like your reader, a little credit and let them absorb it through the narrative itself. Don't have the characters just spell out their literal thoughts and the moral of the story. It feels a little bit too on the nose. So it's still good. Not my favorite though. Behind all sense. I'm getting hoarse in the throat, and I still we have a lot to rank. So I'm going to do a bit of a lightning round. Cat Cafe, kind of, it's good, but it wasn't very good. It's also not Christmas themed, despite what the title says. So yeah, behind no. Okay, The Wolf Tamer, this one was really good. I gave it 4 stars, so this one gets to go right about here. The Book of Riddles, this is another fantasy series by Thea Stelton. I thought this one was really rushed, so it's probably the lower end of the tier, about here. Book 2 of this series is a little better, so I'm going to rate it a little higher. Probably before, roughly about here. Akeley, book 1 of the series, of the trilogy. It's good, it's not my favorite, but yeah, it's still really solid, so right about here. Shadow of the Lion, this one was just okay, kind of boring, not a lot of action mostly. If you like character development it's fine, but not a lot of action. which I would have liked. I mean, it takes place in like caveman time, so there's like a lot of predators and stuff, but not a whole lot of interesting things happening, so that's kind of sad. It's still good though. Behind fell. The Reorigin of Species, a book about the ethics of cloning back extinct animals and the process. Interesting, yeah, this is a very good one. Before Fanigomi. Nature's Giants, a book about large animals, past and present. Solid, not my favorite non-fiction. I read it here. Right about here. Baron and Luthien, yeah, it's another really solid Tolkien story. Not my favorite I've read by him. So I'm probably going to put it on a lower A tier, but yeah, it's still solid. So, roughly... The Raven, this is a non-fiction about ravens in Dutch. I don't think it has an English translation, and the author knows a lot about ravens, but the writing voice is just so dull and boring that I was so bored throughout the entire book. So this one is going to be lower ends. Sorry if your book is very boring, I just can't give it a high rating. Silas and the Wolf, this is a Dutch non-fiction about... Sorry, this is a Dutch fiction book. Children's book about a boy who meets a wolf in the woods, and it's okay, but nothing really much more than that. Probably lower C tier. I like one of two of the characters, but that's really it. The wolf is also belling in it, so that's kind of sad. Father of Lions, this is a non-fiction about a man running a zoo in ISIS-occupied territory, which is obviously very difficult. Kind of hard to read if you have like a difficulty with like animal like abuse, obviously, and like neglect and the animals. I mean, he does everything for his animals he can, which is obviously the best, but because of the war-torn circumstances, there's a lot of animal death and suffering. So if you can't handle that, don't read it. Untitled Book 2, this one I liked better than the first, so I'm going to look up where I went first. I can't find it right now, but I know it should be about 33, yeah, about here. Okay. Wildlife. This is a really short non-fiction about wild animals and wild animals in captivity. And yeah, it's solid. It's just really, it has like really quick pace. So if you want to learn more, definitely read more books on the subject because it's very bare bones. Wolf Riders in a Whirlwind. This is a non-fiction about wolves, and I didn't like it a lot. This was definitely one of the worst wolf non-fictions I read this year. Not horrible, but yeah, probably low tier, about here. The Reign of Wolf 21. Rick McIntyre's stuff is always really good. A book about non-fiction about the wolves in Yellowstone, and I am awaiting the next two books in this trilogy. So, or like, it's no longer a trilogy; it's actually like 4 books now. So that's exciting. Yeah, really good. Nana's World, really awesome book about a guy who adopts a cat while traveling the world on a bike. Untitled Book 3, I liked it, but not as much as Book 2, and the cats have too much plot armor, so that's a bit sad. Probably before Book 1. Yeah, I'd put it before the Dark Eye series. Warriors, oh, this one I don't remember. Warriors points, I gave 3.5 stars, so we are going to give it 3.5 stars. I don't know where exactly I put it. I put it over here. 4. So, okay, The Wisdom of Old Dogs, non-fiction about, well, as the title says, old dogs. This one was good, kind of confrontational because I have an old dog myself. And my cat actually recently passed away, also from old age, so makes me sad, but it's also kind of heartwarming, so yeah, this is a good one. Probably of the Storm. About life in the wild. This is a woman who became a vet in Africa, and it's a Dutch book. I don't think it has an English translation, but yeah, it's really solid. I put it about here. Oog, or this actually has an English cover, but I actually accidentally saved the Dutch one. In English it's called Dawn. This is a book about basically combining science and religion and retelling like how the world came about through the perspective of a proton, which is an interesting concept, but I don't like how it blends science and religion. It's not very good. So yeah, not my favorite. Probably gonna put it over here. Short history of the world in 50 animals. This is a non-fiction, and it kind of does the same as Animals Strike Curious Poses, except I like this one much more, so it's gonna go over here. What's about wolves? This one I have to cross-reference. This one I gave 4 stars. This is a fiction book about a woman who wants to reintroduce wolves to the Scottish Highlands. And it's pretty realistic, and from there it becomes a murder mystery, which honestly interested me less than the wolf stuff, but it's still a good book. Der Hond to Zijn Mensch. This is about the domestication of canines, and I like this one, so this one is going quite high. Okay, so now we get a few of the Dogs of the Spires books. I read a lot of Dogs of the Spires this year because there are quite a few books and they come out in quite a rapid succession. Props to Ethan, so I know the author, so I just don't remember which one I ranked which, so I'm going to reference this. Okay, so Heart of Darkness was one of my less favorites. It's still really good, but it wasn't my total favorite or anything, so this one is going a little bit low. I just didn't find the villain of this second half of Arc 1. I didn't find super interesting, so not bad or anything, just not my favorite villain. Then we have Rising Moon, which was very strong, so this one goes a little higher. Then we have... Usually the Dogs of the Spires books all have kind of the same quality. Usually they're like really good, like good or really good. I think I liked Black Knight a little more. Then we have Rebirth Book 1. This is book 1 of the second arc, and I also really liked it. So I'm going to put it for Fanny Gobi. Then we have... I was certain I read more of Dogs of the Spires this year, but apparently not. Aren't there supposed to be more? There was like one with a cat on the cover. Oh, why can't I find it? Oh, over here. Yes, this one is also a 4 stars. Probably about a little better than that one. And then we have Mist and Vernon. This is a spin-off of Dogs of the Spires, and I also really like this one. So I'm gonna put this behind that one. Then we get a little bit more warriors. Leopard Star's Honor. Sorry, I'm just getting... This is one of the books that made me realize I'm kind of getting tired of warriors by now. I am still reading them because I like reviewing the books, so that's what I'm doing. But it's still... It's not the worst or anything, but I just don't care anymore all that much. Then the same with One Star's Confession. I actually like this one even less. Then we have Sky, which I did actually like. Or, sorry, this one is River actually. This one I did like quite a bit, not a lot, but it was solid. So, at least an interesting introduction to the arc. So this one goes pretty high. Then there is Sky. This is book 2 of this arc, and I also still liked it, but it's not... I also kind of started to lose interest again, so this one goes a little lower. Probably here. Then we have 2 of the graphic novels I read this year. I read the Shadow Clan one. I didn't like it a lot. The art is good and all, but I rarely ever read comics, so yeah, this one didn't do it really for me either. Not bad, just not my thing, I guess. Then we have the Wind Clan comic, which I liked a little better, so this one goes over here. Heroic Animals. This is a non-fiction about, I believe it was like 50 or 100 animals throughout history who had some heroic significance. So yeah, that was pretty good actually. So there's just a lot of dogs, which is obviously going to happen, but I just wish there was a little bit more variation in species. Sarah's Key. This is a really solid historical fiction. This one goes on the upper rankings over here, or actually in the, yeah, I should put it in the A tier. It's good. Yeah, probably about here. Bamboo Kingdom Book 1, not a big fan. I liked, the funny thing is with Bravelands, I find the characters to be incredibly dull, but the plot and world building to be very interesting, and for Bamboo Kingdom it's the complete opposite. I find the characters very interesting, but the world is just so boring and basic and bare bones, so I just find the contrast I find funny. I am going to keep reading both, so because I want to review all the Aaron Hunter books. Don't ask me why I took that upon myself, but I did. And yeah, this one is not bad. It's one of the better 3-star books I read this year. Probably about here. Then we have book 2 of Bamboo Kingdom, which I liked a little more, but it still has the same problems, so I'm going to put it for the sky. Then we have Battleborn. This was a fantasy, and it's also good, but I just wasn't all that interested in the end, so it goes on the lower A tier. The Snow Panther. This is a book about a non-fiction book about a man who goes to look for the Snow Panther to photograph. Except it's mostly about the journey to get to the Snow Panther and not about snow leopards themselves. So it was a very disappointing book, and we don't, except for one picture where it's barely visible, we don't get to see the result of the pictures they were trying to take, which is just disappointing. I mean, if you're going to write a book about a journey to find and photograph an animal, like, you'd think they would at least include a few pictures, but they didn't. Gewilde Dieren. This is a non-fiction Dutch about wild animals and wild animal reintroductions, and this one is pretty solid. I just spotted like a formatting error, which was really awkward. Then there is, in the same vein, this book, Bunzing, Hermelijn and Wezel, which is about mustelids in the Netherlands, the small species, so no martens. And in the same vein, it's a good book. I actually liked it better than Gewilde Dieren, but it also had like a really awkward formatting error where some text that was supposed to be on the back of a page was on the front, and the text was supposed to be on the front was on the back, so one page was kind of like half backwards, which was really awkward. The Rijk of the Snow is van de Sneeuwluipaard, Realm of the Snow Leopard. This is a Dutch fiction fantasy book about felines, and feline, not direct shapeshifters I guess, but they do turn into humans. This was actually before I didn't know that when I ordered it, but this was actually written by back when the author was only 12 years old and self-published it. So obviously it has a little bit of like qualms with like early writing, like everyone makes mistakes at a younger age when writing, and there's a little bit of those mistakes. There's not a lot of focus on the characters, and plot sometimes feels a little wonky, but it's still, like, for this age, it's very solid. So I'm going to put it in the A tier, and I absolutely hope the author keeps writing and improving her craft. I think it's a very imaginative book, and it has a lot of interesting concepts, so I'll give it pops for that. Probably behind Doctors of Spiders books. There's Flames of Hope. I hope I don't get any hate for this, but this is one of the first Wings of Fire books I actually really didn't care for, so I wouldn't call it like horrible or anything, but this definitely is one of the weakest. I liked the Dangerous Gift, I believe was book 4 of the second arc. That one I liked okay, but this one was just pretty disappointing, so it's the lower end. I mean, I did still find it interesting, so I'm not going to put it in with the books I found boring. At least I found it interesting, but it wasn't good, so I'm going to put it behind the Ice Princess. 80 Moons. This is a like novella based on a book series I read, and I liked this one better than the actual conclusion to the series. So yeah, this one gets the A tier. Then we have a Dogs of the Spires field guide, the first one. I believe there's a second one coming out in a few, not too long. I know Ethan is working on it. This one is going to go in the B tier because while it's well written, I just generally am not super fond of field guides, so I'm going to put it in with the other Warrior Cats field guides I like. But it's fine, it's good, it's very helpful because the Dogs of the Spires world keeps expanding and getting bigger, so it's a very handy guide to have. But I'm just not a big fan of field guides in general. So 14 Wolves, this is a children's book about the reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone, and it was fine, but it felt unfocused. Sometimes it wanted to be more informative, and sometimes it wanted to be more of a story about the 14 wolves that were released. So it's good, but yeah, not my favorite. Pretty illustrations though. The Walls of Time duology by William Horwood. I wanted to like these, I really did, but they were just too dark and depressing for me. So they have interesting world building, and some of the characters are okay, but I just think there are way too many male characters, and they also kind of start to blend together after a while. So it's going to be upper C tier for me. And I liked book 1 a little more than book 2. I found another Dogs of the Spires book, which I am going to put about here. And then we have Waya and the Wolf. This is a Dutch fantasy book. It kind of feels like a fairy tale. And it's basically about a boy and his best friend who is a wolf, and they try to mend a rift in their family. And there's like a little bit of magic and stuff like that, but it feels very much like a fairy tale, and it has some Inuit inspiration, so it was really unique. And yeah, I thought this one was actually really sweet and good, so I'm gonna give it a positive ranking. Wolven book. This is a Dutch non-fiction book about wolves, and I really like this one. It's not for like young children. This is more for directed at like older children and teens, but it's a solid book with good illustrations too. Atlas Forms goes in the S tier. This is a non-fiction book about wasps, and it basically made me fall in love with the species, so that's really good. Dalvi, this is a non-fiction about a woman who went to live with the Sami, which is an indigenous group in Norway, for I believe it was like 7 years, and it was fine. Not my favorite non-fiction of the year, but yeah, it was good. So Dalvi gets the B tier. The Way of Kings, this is a non-fiction about lions, and I really like this one, so it gets the A tier. Having a difficult time deciding where to put these, but this one I really liked, so this goes before Finding Gobi. Kona's Song, this is by the same author as The Way of Kings, except I like this one a little less. It's still good, just not my favorite, so I would put it roughly about here. A little lower than Sky probably, before Back Beauty. A little lower, Beyond Fell. So there we go. The Bokkenrijders, this is a historical non-fiction about the Bokkenrijders, which is like an aspect of Dutch history and mythology, mostly history. It actually happened. It's very interesting if you want to look into it. It's called Buck Riders in English. But yeah, this one was good, so I am going to put it over here. This is actually book 2. This is part of a duology, which really goes in depth on the Buck Rider trials. It gets quite gruesome. Dear Man, this is about a non-fiction about a man who abandoned society to live between the roe deer in France, in a forest. And I thought it was an interesting book, but at the same time he really does some like interactions with the deer that you shouldn't be doing, like, you know, keep wild animals wild and stuff like that, but he pets them, he touches them, he gets them habituated to humans, so not as good. It's still a fun read, especially for like deer like me, but not my favorite. Another Dogs of the Spires book, which also goes up here. These four, like the Misty and Vernon and Crimson Dawn and the rest of the Rebirth books over here, are basically on about the same tier, so they are kind of interchangeable. Tales of Fennecan, this is a fantasy So and I really liked it. It's about hippogriffs and dragons. This one also gets the 8 here. Probably right about here. Die Weiße Wölfin. This is a German fiction book for children about a she-wolf, and it's loosely based on the tale of 07, who is a real wolf who lived in Yellowstone. And yeah, I thought this one was really solid. So it goes over here. Rainbow Reflections. This is a prequel to the Rainbow Reflections series, and yeah, I liked it. Not sure where to rank this one. Ooh. Roughly about here, I think. Then we also have the actual Rainbow Reflections book. This is book 3 in the series, and I liked it as well. I liked it better than the prequel actually, so it gets quite high. Over here. Then we have Dragon Empress. This is the 5th and probably final book in the Dragon Speaker series. I hope I got the name correct. No, the name of the series is actually, I believe, Shadowbar Saga. But this is basically the 5th book, and I think it's the penultimate book. And I didn't like it all a lot. I liked 80 Moons better. It's not bad. I just wasn't all that invested anymore. It goes before Fireborn. A Lion Called Christian. This is a non-fiction based on true events about a 2 men who raised a lion cub in London in the 70s. And you know, basically a whole lot of don't try this at home disclaimers. Lions aren't pets, wild animals aren't pets, but you know, it's still a solid book. The ending is like open because we don't know actually if Christian ended up surviving in the wild after they released him, but it's still a solid book. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a higher rating. Probably over here. Behind the Way of Kings. Then we have another book like this is Zamba, also about a man's pet lion, except this one was like an animal actor in a whole lot of Hollywood movies. Also in the 19th century, and this one I liked a whole lot less because it's basically very irresponsible, and I know times have changed and we think differently about wild animal and human interactions now, but even with the hindsight, it's just a bit uncomfortable. And with how the animal is treated, wasn't a big fan. Goes about here. Monster of God. This is a non-fiction about animal species which have killed humans in the past, such as bears and crocodiles and lions. Yeah, this is a really good one. Very long, very thorough. Sparks discussion, but yeah, I like this one. So let's go over here. Wolfentide. This is a Dutch book. I don't think it has been translated into English, and it is a Viking fantasy about wolf shapeshifters, and it has a lot of LGBT elements, which I like. I mean, I'm LGBT myself, so all for that. But the book itself, I just wasn't all that invested in. I don't know what it is exactly. I like the characters, but the plot, I just had a lot of trouble staying invested. So it's overall a solid book, but it's not my favorite, probably. Gonna be on the lower end of this one. Over here, besides Alvaro. Wolf in the Polder. This is a Dutch wolf xenofiction, also has not been translated, and it is about wolves returning to the Netherlands for the first time, written from the perspective of the wolves, obviously. And well, a very good idea for a book. I found the execution to be pretty lackluster, so not the biggest fan. Overall, ranking is becoming very difficult right now, so okay. Wild Boar. This is a non-fiction book for adults about wild boar, as it exactly says on the tin, and this one is just fine, so yeah, not much to say about it. Wolf and Hart. This is a Dutch collection of short stories about animals throughout history, including again Lobo, King of the Current the wolf, but again also quite a few others. And this one was really good, so yeah, probably lower end of the A tier. Timber. This is another exotic or like wild animal pets book. This is about a woman in the Netherlands in the 19th century who had a pet wolf, and yeah, it's you know, same story as with Zamba, you know, not very responsible, especially with how we look at wild animals and pets nowadays. But at the same time, this one I liked better than Zamba. She was at least a little bit more responsible with her wolf, with letting him interact, not letting him interact with other humans, but at the same time, she also wasn't that responsible. So I'm gonna put this one on the lower end. It was at least still interesting, so I'm going to put it before quite a few of these. Before Spirit of the Fox. Calcutta. This is actually a hyena xenofiction. Yes, they do exist. So I like this one. Not as much as I would have liked. I really would have wished this was like one of my favorite books because I love hyenas and there's basically no xenofiction about them. I like this one, just not as much as I had hoped. So it's going to be a lower end of the A tier for me. Scream of the White Bear, or Bears. I still don't remember which is the actual title. This is another David Clement Davies xenofiction. Takes place in the same realm as like Firebringer and The Sight. And this one was really weird and really long, and it's very complicated. I was so mixed on this one. It's not in a positive way, by the way. So yeah, it's not gonna be a B. I think it's gonna be a upper C. It's not horrible. I'd put it still before this one. It was at least interesting in like kind of like how weird everything got. So it's still interesting. So that's something. I found another Seekers book. So I'm going to look at which one that is. That is 4 of the first arc. And it's also got 4 stars, so it's going to go about here. Before the Snow Panther. Another wolf non-fiction book. We're almost there. This one got 3 stars. Probably has some outdated information. A lot of these books I borrowed from the library about wolves for younger readers had like outdated information. So I'm gonna put it over here. Then we have The Green Fire. This is one of my favorites. So it's gonna go in the mid A tier probably. Roughly about here. Maybe about, yeah, I think it should go over here. This is a fantasy, Dutch fantasy series, book 1. And I also read book 2, which is this one, and I actually liked it a little more than the first book. So it gets to go up there. Then we have Warriors Battles of the Clans. This was one of my lesser favorite field guides, so I'm gonna put it over here in front of Secrets of the Clans, because Secrets of the Clans probably has more retconned information. So yeah. Born Free. This is about a lioness who, a non-fiction about a lioness who grew up captive but was eventually released. It was okay. I have some qualms with the book, but you can read that in a review. Like, she was released, but I still doubt she was like truly a wild lion, because they kept interacting with her even after she was wild, so quote unquote wild. So yeah, like if you really release a lioness, you expect as little human interaction and interference as possible, but they constantly kept going back to feed her and stuff. So yeah, not the best, not the worst. It's at least not boring, so I'm going to put it in front of, like, the lower end of the B tier is books I consider good but still boring. So like, or at least decent and boring, but mostly are like good, but I mostly consider them boring, or I have some other problems with them. Born Free at least wasn't boring, so I'll give it that. It goes over there. The Jungle Book, I've read this one twice now, and I really keep trying, but I just don't like this book. I've come to the conclusion something about the writing voices really puts me off. It's the upper D tier, but it's still the D tier. Sorry, I gave it 1 star. I can't get into the writing voice of the author. Warhorse, this is a good book, so it is going to be lower A tier. Probably over here somewhere. Darkness goes first. Then we have Coming Home. This is a xenofiction novel about wolves, and it is actually a prequel novel to the Wolf movie, which is being worked on YouTube. Some of you might remember it from like I don't think it has updated for a while, but it used to be like a big project by Silver Sky Studios to make like an independent movie about wolves, 2D animated. I don't think they have made like any recent updates. I am subscribed to their YouTube channel and I haven't received anything in my subscription box. But the prequel novel is still available, so, and I liked it. Just going to cross-reference it real quick, just to make sure. I gave it 4 stars, so it's gonna be better than this. Behind cutscenes, no, actually in front. Okay. Many of Savo, this one is another bad book, I didn't like it. It's basically the same as Invited Africa, but with a different guy, but it's the same premise, just another hunter in the 1800s in Africa. Another wolves book. This is another non-fiction about wolves for children, and this one also has 2 stars, so it probably has some outdated information. So I'm ranking these about roughly the same. I'm gonna put Hunters of the North in front of those because at least it has accurate information, though I don't like the whole repackaged book. And finally we have The Last Wolf. This is a book about wolves in Great Britain and the possibility of reintroducing them, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. Probably goes behind Born 3. Yeah, guns. Flames of Hope. So I liked it about equal as Wolf, Rise in the Whirlwind. So yeah, this is my ranking list now. I'm going to see if I need to change anything. Going to make a few adjustments just to be certain I don't have anything wrong. Okay, so yeah, the Dogs of the Spiders books are all good. Rainbow Reflections I got. Kristen Reviews goes back a little bit behind Gobi. Rainbow Reflections, yes, that's all checks out. Untitled Walls is probably better than this. Not better than 18 Moons though. So over here I've got the B tier, and I think it all looks pretty good. I actually think I might put Simlica's Vote in behind Alpstance. Then we got a bunch more non-fiction books. This one goes actually a little in front. This one is actually better than that. So I also think Shadow of the Lion should go in front of Kona's Song. Then this all looks pretty good. I think the Walls of Karmpa should go a little bit in front. Snow Panther should probably go back because it was just a huge disappointment. And then we have this one. Ice Princess can go a little bit further behind Ashoka. Then we have, yeah, I think this is roughly okay. This one is a little bit better. I mean, the book, despite the problematic person I interviewed, it's still a very interesting book. The topic is very interesting and it's very thorough, but so I'm gonna put it a little higher, but you know, it's still not great. Vulpes also deserves a little better to be down here. I thought it was boring, but it wasn't bad or anything. Probably behind the Flames of Hope or in front. I'm gonna put it behind because I still found it less interesting than the Flames of Hope. Then we have the Wolves of Time books, and from here I am pretty much satisfied, I think. Tribon actually deserves a little better than to be behind the Warriors books. And yeah, this is pretty much it. These I all feel roughly the same about. Yeah, so here we have the tier list. This is A tier. Daybreak, Fellowship of the Ring, The Return of the King, The Two Towers, and Endless Forms. Then on the 8th tier we have a whole lot of books. Riftlands Book 2, Dogs, Seekers, Smoke Mountain, But the Burning Shadow, Blood and Bone, Wildborn, Lost Animals, A Cat Named Bob, Book 3, I can't read the titles on all of them, sorry. Book 3 of Arc 2, Bravelands, Book 1 of Gods and Warriors, Nala's World, The Reign of Wolf 21, Entling the First, Entling the Last, Droomwandelaar Wolvenvuur, The Elders by Foxcraft, The Wolf Tamer Book 1, The Forgotten People of het Vergeten Volk, Monster of God, Father of Lions, The Wise Wolfin, Droomwandelaar Aurora, Ottilie Coulter, Book 2, Raya and the Wolf, The Re-Origin of Species, Het Groene Vuur or The Green Fire, Het Wolvenboek or The Book of Wolves, Der Hund und sein Mensch or The Dog and His Person, Dogs of the Spires Arc 2 Book 5, Misty and Vernon Book 1, Dogs of the Spires Rebirth Book 1, Dogs of the Spires Rebirth Book 2. I believe this one is Dogs of the Spires Rebirth Book 3, if I am correct, to Ash. Rainbow Reflections Book 3, The Way of Kings, The Tales of Venekan Book 1, Bokkenrijders, Schande van Limburg Book 2, Fanny Gobi, A Lion Called Christian, Ottilie Coulter Book 3, Rainbow Reflections Prequel, Blackest Night, Rising Moon, The Endless Wilderness by Seekers, Realm of the Snow Leopard, Wild Dog City by Lydia West, Animal Words, Ottilie Coulter Book 1, Wolfheart, Rokutta, Björn and Lufien, Sarah's Key, Skulls, Grey Wolves, Seekers, Heart of Darkness, Bark Horse, Empty Moons, Once There Were Wolves, Non-Fiction Wolf Book, A Game of Thrones, Wild Animals of the North, Foxcraft Book 1, Dragon Empress, Fireborn, Valkyria, Seraphina Book 2, Seraphina Book 1, Secrets of the Wild Wood, We Were Here First, Coming Home, Two Warriors Field Guides, Code and Cats of the Clans, Dogs of the Spires Field Guide, The Grizzly King, Cat Sense, Bravelands Arc 2 Book 2, Bravelands Arc 1 Book 6, Bravelands Arc 2 Book 1, In the Power of the Wolf Witch, Storm, Heroic Animals, About Life in the Wild, Old Dogs, Bunzing, Hermelijn en Wezel, Gewilde Dieren, Warriors River, Entling Book 3, Wildlife, Bamboo Kingdom Book 2, Warriors Arc, I don't know which arc this is honestly, Sky, All Sense, Ziemlich Beste Voeten, Dalvi, Black Beauty, Nature's Giants, The Truth About Animals, Wild Boars of Wild Zwijnen, Vel, Schaduw van de Leeuw or Shadow of the Lion, Corona's Song, Short History of the World in 50 Animals, I don't know the title, but it's the Mudclaw comic of Warriors, Bravelands Arc 1 Book 1, 3 books of Arc 1 of Seekers, I can't distinguish the titles to be honest, Bravelands Book 5, Bravelands Book 4 of Arc 1, The Desert Princess, House with the Lions, The Rise and Fall of Dinosaurs, Book 2 of the Encanto series. Then we have 3 Warriors novellas, the one about Black Star Daisy and Spotfur, Bamboo Kingdom Book 1, Deerman, Wolftide or Time of Wolves, The Archer of Hirado of de Boogschutter van Hirado, Animals Strike Curious Poses, The Shadow Clan graphic novel, Nowhere, 14 Wolves, Cat Café, Battleborn, The Good Dog by Avi, Wolves of Kernpaw, Pirate Son of Pirate Zone, Blood Moon, Nashoga, The Ice Princess, Spiders, The Book of Riddles, Book 1, Encanto Book 1, I mean, The Snow Panther, Wolf in the Polder, The Starving Heart, Firstborn, The Coral Princess, Timber, Spirit of the Fox, Wolf, Seekers, I believe this is one of the Seekers books, I can't tell which one is which, Born Free, another Wolf book, Scream of the White Bear, The Flames of Hope, Focus the Red Fox, The Last Wolf, Wolves, Riders and the Whirlwind, Silas and the Wolf, The Mystery of the White Lions, Battles of the Clans, Secrets of the Clans, The Knights of Rosande of de Ridders van Rosande, The Wrath of the Raven, Wolves of Time Book 1 and Wolves of Time Book 2, The Art of Being a Wolf, How to Tame a Fox, The Wolvenhoedel of The Wolfpack, De Opstand van Lupus Valsemor, Triban, De Magical van der Magie of Triban, The Source of Magic, Leopard Star's Honor, One Star's Confession, Wolves, Jagers, Hunters of the North or Wolves, Jagers van het Noorden, A few more Wolves non-fiction books, all with the same title. Philocene, Oer or Dawn, Zamba, 1 De Dood van de Halfling of 1 De Death of the Halfling, Dragon's Green, Ascendant's Right, The Last Ringbearer. Then on the D tier we finally have the Jungle Book, De Omsingelde Jager of the Surrounded Hunter, The Living Mountain, In Bright's Africa, Breaking Dawn, Dracula, The Many Years of Savo, and yeah, okay, this one isn't as bad, so I'm going to put it here. Yeah, Did You Know Wolves is over there. So yeah, I got the entire tier list complete, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sorry this took so long. Okay, so I'm going to save it just to be sure. Yeah, okay, I got it saved. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you watch this all the way through, you are a true champion, because this probably took forever. But yeah, thank you for watching and have a nice day.